Hello everyone, welcome once again to Constantine Discussions. I am Captain Logan.
And I'm Steve Danse.
Steve, welcome back.
Thanks for having me back.
No problem. Thank you once again for filling in for Eric. As we've been saying, Eric is not with us right now. He is having some technical difficulties, and hopefully he will be back with us sometime soon. But Steve is filling in for the foreseeable future for as long as it takes Eric to get back with us. So everybody make a spell for Eric to come back. You know, like come up with your own custom spell. And I say that because the custom ones don't seem to work at all. So you don't really have to worry about anything like, you know, happening. Because, well, as long as...
Try Voudou. I hear Voudou is really in.
Yeah, try. Yeah. I don't know if we should be advocating that. I don't know.
Well, Constantine does.
I can do that. But this isn't like raising somebody from the dead. This is just getting Eric on camera. You know what I mean? It seems like...
Isn't that not the same thing?
Let's go ahead now and talk once again a little bit about last week's episode, Feast of Friends, with a dabbling of Devil's Vinyl, and we will answer a few questions and comments from our audience. The first one comes from Aiden Walsh. In Feast of Friends, the episode takes place in Atlanta, but at the end, they're in the Fox Theater in Detroit.
Oh.
Not sure if they were careless or if there is a Fox Theater in Atlanta and it was just cheaper to shoot in Michigan rather than Georgia. I guess I could have looked that up. I didn't read this ahead of time. Which begs the question, why didn't they just have the episode take place in Detroit? That's a good question. Did that episode have to take place in Atlanta? Can you remember, was there anything about it that necessitated it being in our kind of hometown?
Aside from, like, just musical history a little bit? Not really, no. I mean, like we said, the biggest problem with the show so far has been just like location doesn't feel like it's been there.
Yeah. But I thought it was...
I had no idea the Fox Theater was a Detroit thing.
But it was Feast of Friends that was in it. That was in Atlanta. What does that have to do with musical history? I mean, that was the
I thought we were talking about Devil's Vinyl. Sorry.
No. We were talking about Feast. No, Devil's Vinyl doesn't. It takes place in a different place.
Oh yeah, it does. That's Chicago, isn't it?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. See, that's the problem. They're all blending.
Eric Wright. Fun fact: Matt Ryan is in an Assassin's Creed game. Oh, cool. I didn't know that.
Awesome. Okay. That guy has a fantastic voice.
Evan Greiner, the Constantine of the comics, Constantine, because it's comics, so I have to pronounce it right. Or people will do voodoo spells against me. There'll be like a Captain Logan voodoo doll, and he'll be doing like comment of the week, but then people like point him with. The Constantine of the comics does have a compassionate side. It's just not as pronounced as it is in the show. Yeah, I was kind of gathering that from what you were saying last time, that you know he does have that side, but it doesn't come out as much, and it's not as pronounced and as easy to see.
Yeah, a really good example of that was like there's a fantastic annual where Constantine's just tasting this girl whose power is to make you kill yourself by seeing how terrible of a person you are, and he's really emotional in that near the end. But yeah, it's nowhere near as upfront as it is in the show.
Forgive me, I totally thought you said he was tasting a girl. Whoa, your audio is gone.
Hello?
There you are.
Okay, I couldn't hear you for a second. What'd you say?
Well, I thought you said that Constantine was tasting a girl.
No, he's chasing.
Chasing.
Excuse me. Whose power is to make you want to kill yourself.
It was like no. I'll give you an example of when Constantine has a compassionate side. There's this annual where he's tasting. Anyway, Tamir Mugo, Cap speaking in terms of Chaz, the producers have said that he is not immortal, and that there will be an upcoming episode which will focus on Chaz's estranged wife and daughter. Oh, good! We need stuff about this guy, because today's episode, we once again get to see him get completely eviscerated and start healing himself, and we have no idea where the healing factor comes from yet.
Yeah, when they were live tweeting the show, the producer said episode 10 is when that's going to happen.
By the way, they seem to have this really planned out.
Yeah.
Like they've just really got their ducks in a row. You can tell like so much command of narrative and command of the progression. It's refreshing.
Yeah. When we get into this episode, we talk about like the voodoo authenticity and stuff. Like you can tell how much they care about it.
Yeah. Let's go on now to today's episode. In fact, Danse Voudou, and Overall, I guess I'll just begin with, once again, as I've been praising the show for a lot, and I think this one, more than any of the others, really has this, it's a really cool story by itself, but does a lot to push things forward for the main narrative, and more than any other episode has. This is the densest of them. This is the most unpredictable of them so far, I think. This is the most mythology-heavy episode, and it doesn't get bogged down with all that stuff. I mean, it knows what to give you, it knows when, everything feels necessary, and I think my favorite thing about it was that we got a team-up with Constantine and Midnight, and I expected this to further... To more further, although maybe it is in a way, the possible idea that Midnight is going to sort of be Constantine's arch nemesis, or kind of a smoking man, the guy that keeps coming back, that you get excited to see him have to face off against. And I thought that they were going to become even more antagonistic in this episode, and seeing them forced to work together I thought was really, really fun.
Yeah, it seems like every time they see eye to eye, there's two other things they seem to disagree on.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
Like, Midnight just has no patience for the Constantine's way of doing things. He's very open about, like, he's a street wizard, he's a jack of all trades, master of none, and he blames, every time something goes bad, he blames it on Constantine's lack of respect for the way magic is supposed to be. And Constantine is on the opposite end of that, saying that it's not about letting those powers work through you and respecting them, it's shoving them out, and he's very pessimistic about it.
Well, and they both have really good reasons for disliking each other, and part of it is because they're mirrors of each other, and every time they look at the other one, they see too much of themselves. They definitely have that kind of relationship going on.
Yeah, yeah. They have that exchange about, like, you sent that girl to hell, and yeah, at least it wasn't my own sister, and I'm like, yeah.
You both did it. I mean, ultimately, at the end of the day, whether you respect the magic or not, you're both part of a world that you don't belong to, and there are consequences to even messing with it. And, like, in a way, it seems like they're both they both look at it differently, but they're both too good at it. Human beings are not supposed to be doing what they're doing.
Yeah, I really like also that we don't just get Midnight always works and his spells are just great, because last episode, it was all, or maybe the episode before that, it was all about magic has a price, it's costly. And no matter what Midnight does in this episode, whether it works or not, there is some kind of catch to it.
Yeah. Well, what does... Like, it seems like the whole respect thing is kind of just a justification for him.
Yeah.
Because what does it ultimately do for him? I mean, there are as many consequences to what he does as there are for Constantine's. And like I said, at the end of the day, they're doing the same thing. They just approach it differently. And they do it for the same reasons. Their motivations are the same. This episode's all about guilt, and they're both very guilty, and that's the reason they do what they do.
Yeah, and there's also, like, a bit of, like, who's the master of their own destiny going in with that magic, where Papa Midnight is... And they take that stuff with his sister from the comics, so at least for as far as the show's concerned, you can make it to some extent of Papa Midnight lost his sister, perhaps because he wasn't respectful of the arts he's playing with. And every time he's doing it, it's always like this very big, theatrical, pronounced, disciplined way of doing it. It's always in this strict pattern, whereas Constantine, he just uses whatever he can get. And that's very specifically because he doesn't want to be roped into this any longer than he has to be. He wants to make sure that when he uses magic, it's his weapon, and magic is, and the magic is not using him as a weapon.
Well, and I don't fully have my thoughts formulated on this, so I'd like to just kind of explore it with you for a minute, Steve. What is it in their backgrounds? Because you looked at Midnight for a minute. So looking at Constantine's background, what is it that leads him to his disrespect for the magic more than Midnight's? Do you think?
I assume it's just like the thing that happened with Astra, with him sending her to hell, and his whole strategy was she's infected with a demon, so we'll just get a bigger demon to get it out.
Yeah.
And that's ultimately the price he has to pay for it, of magic costs too much, and if you can't control it, or if you let it work too much, then it's going to have grave consequences.
Well, and I guess
Midnight's the opposite way of that.
But I guess what I'm getting at is, why did Midnight see it as, I made a mistake, if that's what it is, because we don't know as much about his background as we do Constantine's, and you're bringing some of the comics to it. But if you're right, and with Midnight it is, I didn't respect the rules of this occult stuff, And so I have to kind of build this set of values based on that. He has this kind of system. Why doesn't Constantine come to the same thing? And does it have more to do with... Does it have less to do with Astra and more to do with his mother? Is it not...
I mean, yeah, it may.
Is
we
it
got
not...
that backstory about his dad in the first episode, and then Midnight offering him with his mother this episode. Yeah, it could very well be the way they're raised.
No, that's not what I mean.
We haven't gotten a lot of his backstory
yeah.
Pre what he's doing now. We just know something happened with Astra, and we don't know what kind of person he was before that, really.
I'm not suggesting upbringing. I'm suggesting that Constantine what happened to Astra was because Constantine already blamed himself for something that he actually didn't have any control over. Mm-hmm. He blames himself for the death of his mother because she died when he was born. And we've been told before that his father blamed him for that, and that's part of why he developed that psychosis. So what I'm suggesting, the more I'm thinking about it, I've had to get to this as we've been talking. What I'm suggesting is that perhaps the reason Constantine has not been able to develop the kind of respect and hasn't learned from his mistake the same way that Midnight thinks maybe he has, is because he blames nature as much as he blames himself for what happened to his mother in the first place. So he already has this built-in disrespect for the rules of nature, and so he can't find that because his own guilt is wrapped up too much in his hatred of destiny, of taking my mother from me. And Midnight doesn't have that. So I'm suggesting that it has more to do with the thing that Constantine has in his past that Midnight just doesn't. Midnight has the one thing, Constantine has the vicious cycle.
Yeah, okay, I can see where you're going with that. That would fit really well with the way he talks to Manny in previous episodes. Of like, Manny mentions, like, you're the guy that has the guts to tell an angel to go to hell. Yeah. And every time he talks about heaven and hell, he always labels them as, like, tired institutions and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. And he's very kind of 80s anti-establishment in this show, like he's listening to punk rock anarchy in the UK. Yeah. So... I can see what you're saying with that.
It's the kind of classic...
Get a little bit more of Midnight's backstory as we go along to parallel that.
But you're right, and I imagine we will, because they are clearly two sides of the same coin. I mean, it's that classic two sides of the same coin kind of thing. But I'm thinking that I don't know where I was going with that thought. I'm sorry. Anyway, I'm sorry. Moving right along. You're right. They clearly are two sides of the same coin, and it's cool that by the end of this episode they aren't suddenly friends either. No, and I wouldn't have accepted that.
It could have been very easy to do that in some cases.
Yeah.
But I love that one of his last lines is, "Our truce ends at the bottom of that glass."
Oh, sorry. I just remember what I was going to say. Constantine is, I think, very clearly he has that kind of mentality about God and the good side of the cosmic stuff. Is why does God allow bad things to happen to people?
Mm-hmm.
And I think he wouldn't have that as much if it weren't for... So this is where the upbringing comes in. He wouldn't have that as much if it weren't for the way that his dad treated him. What he can't reconcile is he blames himself, but he also blames the universe. And those two things don't go together, and that's why he just keeps making the same mistake every time. But again, the reason that I can find some empathy for the character is that I don't know what you do except try. Because wouldn't we be less sympathetic with him if he just gave up?
Yeah, I love how that, by the way, works into the plot, too, of everyone is responsible for this evil killing people because they allow themselves to feel regret. And in a lot of ways, they hang on to that too much and they are entrapped in the cycle the same way Constantine is. The difference is they have the ability to let go of it and he can't.
And does that not make John... Yeah, but they have to be desperate enough to come to that place, right? So does that not reinforce the idea that what John is doing is inherently a very human thing? It's just like one of the furthest extremes of that idea. And so
Yeah, exactly.
It's easier to appreciate what John is doing because we all have that to some degree, and that's why every character in this parallels that side of him.
Yeah, exactly. He has that fantastic line when he's talking to one of them of "You're hell bent on a path to redemption."
I had that written down in my quotes. Yeah.
Oh yeah. That's great. That pretty much summarizes everything there is to say about that character.
Yeah. Sure
the show
is.
does that a lot, where it just seems like every episode there's one quote, and if you just keep saying it, the episode just keeps making sense.
Yeah, and it's not like what's cool is I don't think it pounds messages home too hard.
No, not like that. It's
especially
just
for broadcast
they're
TV.
so good at encapsulating themes and dialogue.
And making everything come together, like as you're watching the show, it feels like you're just watching events naturally unfold, and then when you get to the end and you start really think about it, you've got all these thematic puzzle pieces that just come together. So you don't feel like you've been beat over the head the whole episode with "this is about guilt, this is about guilt, people should get rid of their guilt, and then things are better." It doesn't really feel that way because I'm getting invested in what feel like real people, and then when I get to the end, if I start to dissect it, then I can see that theme working throughout it. But I don't have to think about theme as I'm watching the episode, right? I'm just watching these people doing very real things and appreciating how they're having to react to stuff and respond to things. And then when I start putting my analytical hat on, then I go, okay, this is and that's what good fiction does, right? It's like all of the thematic stuff that we're always talking about, the character parallels and all the artsy fartsy stuff, that's all underlying in a good story. That's all the subtext. A story has to make you care about people and make you think about and make you just like enjoy it on that surface level in the first place. And then when you get done, like it's best if you're just not even thinking about that stuff that hard, as you're watching. And then when you start to really give it some thought later, you go, oh wow, and then here's all this underlying stuff. I love a show that makes me think and is entertaining, and this show is a perfect example of that.
Yeah, and it's great that it works with us there, but it's also great that it works for just people that watch TV for fun. Like, I've got a friend who watches the show, and he's like, oh my god, did you see the latest episode of Constantine? And while he's describing what happens to me, it's impossible for him not to talk about theme, and he never does that. Like, it's just the way this show is built and the way the events unfold, you're just naturally put into a place where you have to think about those things.
Yeah, sure.
And it's great. It's almost like it's fiction that makes you smarter in some ways.
Yeah, because you're right. And I said, like, works on a surface level, and then that stuff's underneath, and you think about it later. But maybe it's more entwined than that. Maybe it's just that you can't think about this show without that stuff coming up. But it doesn't feel like a college lecture. No,
it's not a lecture at all. It's not heavy-handed at all. It's just a matter of, like, it's compressed so well. It doesn't feel like there's any parts of it that are padded. And even if you can see the formulas, you can only see it after you've already disengaged from the show.
Yeah. I'm very impressed with this one because while I expected all of the seemingly unrelated cases to all come together in some way by the end, first of all, that happened earlier than I thought it might. I really thought that could be a very 5-minute wrap-up-y, and it wasn't like that. But it's really dense in that it has to make all those one-shot supporting characters come alive, the ones that are guilty and have brought these souls back. It has to make the souls interesting and sympathetic in some way. And then you have to buy the way they all came up, and you have to do character stuff with Midnight when he's only in the show for about 15-20 minutes.
Yeah.
That's sophisticated.
All that, and you're also setting up a character who's very minor and it's going to become bigger later on. Like, they're juggling a lot of people.
You're
and
right.
I wasn't expecting Jim Curran to be as good as he was.
Suddenly Corrigan's in this, yeah.
Everything with him is great. When he's arresting John and he's like, how do you deal with this kind of stuff? And it's just so naturally tied into the rest of the themes and the way John looks at nature versus the way Midnight looks at nature, and that struggle that the guy has already brewing inside of him. They did a really good job of just not making him generic and a side character when they easily could have. Like, Arrow does this thing of, like, you introduce a generic side character and you develop over the course of the show. This show just gets to it right away. Like, it gets to the heart of who this guy is.
Yeah, and I will say that I had a hard time. I mean, I wish I'd had time to watch this second time because I had a hard time not compartmentalizing and focusing really hard on certain characters over other characters because there is a lot going on here, and it all it all comes together really well, and none of that stuff feels misplaced or anything. But like, I haven't given Corrigan the kind of thought yet that I've given to Midnight, right? Because right after I saw this, I wanted to think about what Midnight tells me about John Constantine. Because of how much more we've learned about him. But then again, I wasn't thinking about him as much as some of the other things I was thinking about in Devil's Vinyl when he was first introduced. So I imagine that as time goes on and Corrigan gets more of his own episode, more of that is going to kind of come out for me.
Yeah. Also, I really appreciate the fact that we didn't get Midnight last week with A Feast of Friends.
Yeah.
Because in that story in the comics, John goes to him to get the voodoo information to exorcise the demon. And so if we had that like every episode where John's just able to go to him like that, it would really undercut the kind of conflict they have here.
Yeah, they have all this tension, and they don't get along, and they shouldn't get along, and I still can't decide if they're not possibly arch enemies. Or will become
in the comics, it's like that quite a bit of like, these guys work with each other in cases because they have to.
Yeah.
But it's really hard for them to be on the same side. Because their goals and their philosophies are so naturally opposed. And
it is really cool to give him somebody who is as good at this as he is. So they're just perfectly matched. And that's fun on just a, on just a hero versus villain kind of level of, you want to, or just a protagonist versus antagonist level. You want to match for your main character. You want somebody that is hard to just immediately overcome, and he's kind of his equal. That's his Reverse Flash.
Yeah, there's a sense of danger between those two that isn't always there with good guy, bad guy fights, because the title character is always going to win out. But with this show, like, Midnight's really good at what he does, and every time he shows up and when Zed talks about him, they're concerned that he could kill John. And in my mind, there's almost no doubt that he could with the way how skilled he is with voodoo. So they do a really good job of making sure that it's not gimmicky that John's able to like survive an encounter with him, or there's no danger present for him. Like there's always a very natural conflict, and there's almost a tension of if either one of them says the wrong word, they could be at war just as easily as they are in a truce.
Yeah, that's true. It's always, if they have an alliance, it's always going to be a really uneasy alliance.
Yeah.
One thing I really enjoyed about this episode was the motif of John it happens twice. John is in a predicament. He seems to be in a pickle where he has been captured, and then he had control over the situation the entire time.
Yeah.
And they do it twice. And I thought that was a lot of fun, and also made me really kind of yearn for the episode where John is completely out of ideas. Because it hasn't really happened yet. Like, even a couple episodes ago with Midnight, when he was on that table, he still had a plan.
Yeah.
And he seems to always know how to get out of situations like that. But I thought it was really cool that when he was with Corrigan, like, how did that scene, I was really surprised by it. How did that scene start with, he's in shackles, and end with, I am planning what to do about this problem with the guy who arrested me. And then he did it with Midnight later. And that began as, he hides him, he throws him in the trunk, and then that scene ends with, now we're gonna go stop this problem.
Yeah, it's fantastic. And like even last episode, Feast of Friends, like the moment he realized what he had to do with the demon, there was no doubt in his mind of how he was gonna manipulate his friend to get over there. It's really interesting that John always talks about the fact that he's still a Betty Dabbler, and he doesn't know everything, and he's still training, but his card still says Master of the Dark Arts.
Yeah, he hasn't changed it yet.
It's really hard to buy that he is a petty dabbler in some ways, because he's always good at everything. He's always so good at reading people. He's always able to beat the demon at the end of the day. but they never make it feel gimmicky. They never make it feel like John wins because he's John.
You know, he's only really said that petty dabbler thing in the pilot. I don't know if he's said it since then.
No, he hasn't. It's still a line I think that was really indicative that I think they kept with it.
It is, but hear me out for a second, because Zed hits him really hard a couple episodes ago, I think it is, about how arrogant he is.
Mm-hmm.
And he certainly has some of that, and it kind of can't help it, partly just because he keeps himself isolated and he's self-sufficient and he doesn't rely on other people. And that just inherently brings out an ego in a person often, right? Because, like, well, the only person you trust is you. And so it just inherently you would have something of an ego. And it just makes me wonder if the petty dabbler line was like if he really feels that way, or if he was being a little bit sarcastic when he said that. I'm not real sure how to what to make of that. And there's a little bit of, well, it's a pilot, and now we've moved past the pilot, and we're kind of like more defining the character now. So I don't know. I just don't know how much stock I want to put in that.
Okay, yeah, that's totally fair. I still like, though, that they're keeping some of that in play.
Yeah.
Is he really as good as he says he is? Versus that moment where he might run out of ideas, because they're really hyping up this darkness that he's going to probably fight by the end of the season.
Yeah.
And by the end of how ominous it is of someone's going to betray you. And John's always talking about that in a couple of episodes ago. I think that even if we can't put stock in that line, I think there's still, at least in the way the show's being written so far, that they're planning for that moment where he's going to feel like just a petty dabbler.
Yeah, and on the other hand, he is a very conflicted character. He does have a lot of insecurities. I mean, after all, he keeps trying to fix his past mistakes and compounding them and creating new ones. So he's not fully confident either. So it could be so, and also he tried to stop. He knows that everybody who's around him gets hurt or killed. He knows that the world is in some ways a much worse place with him in it doing magic, but he doesn't know what to do other than try to fix the mistakes that he made in his past. And there's nobody else dealing with this darkness thing, so he feels compelled. There's a responsibility there. So I'm seeing both sides of the whole of the whole. How does he really look at his own abilities, you know, that like okay, well, he is in some ways the only person who can do what he does, maybe save Midnight, but on the other hand, he can't fully trust his own power because look at what it's done to people. And how much, if you were him, how much of it would you blame yourself for not being good enough at it, and for having control or whatever? And you know, there's stuff about patience in another episode, and how much of it is, see, this is why I don't respect the magic, because it doesn't matter who's using it. You see what I'm saying? Yeah. So it's a question.
Yeah, it's fascinating. This is a character that's constantly being developed with every episode, and I think that's working great. It's not we have a very clearly defined arc, point A, point B, point C. We just keep learning about the way he's looking at things with every episode, and I'm appreciating that. I'm
gonna go through some quick unrelated notes. My one little criticism is I found it difficult, and this is because of a character thing, and so it makes sense, but it made me want to watch this again and with subtitles. I found it difficult about 20% of the time to make out what Jim Corrigan was saying.
Oh, really? I didn't have that at all.
Oh, wow. Okay, maybe I should watch it with headphones on. But yeah, just watching on my couch. I found he's so monotone and soft spoken, and he has this like. He has that like that really deadpan kind of attitude that I found it sometimes difficult. He doesn't open his mouth and articulate. I found it hard to hear what he's saying.
Okay, I didn't have that. I know people are complaining a little bit about like the screen being too dark, also, but I haven't had that yet either.
I haven't had that.
Okay. I don't know what it is. Maybe like were you watching it on like a big TV or something? Like I don't know. I'm not sure if like the quality streaming versus TV might be different.
Maybe so. I was projecting.
Okay. Yeah, so I'm not sure. It might just be like a temporary go back and watch it again issue.
Something, once again, just going through some random notes. That was like, oh, you know what? As I'm criticizing things, let me throw out an amusing little nitpick that I noticed, which is, yes, I know some folks don't like it when you nitpick, but amusing things come up, and I want to talk about them. So here's an amusing thing that came up. If you're in a trunk, the music in the car when it's that loud is not going to be that muffled. Just want to throw that.
I didn't think of that. I did have 2 nitpicks, but those weren't.
Oh, cool! What are you? What were you, here? There's like this show is so good.
Yeah.
What were your nitpicks?
One of them was when we first meet the Philip Kid ghost. When he's being picked up by that guy, we have the hint that this guy's a pedophile, and then we get nothing done with it.
What's the hint? I didn't pick up on that at all.
We see his hand on his lap rubbing against it.
I didn't notice that.
I don't know. Like, I watched it twice, and he's like, "Are you cold?" And he says, "Maybe we can turn up the heat," and puts his hand on his lap. And I don't know what that was about.
Oh, interesting. When I see it again, I will look for that.
Okay, yeah, I don't know what that's about. And then the other thing was the first ghost that's killing people with a scissor that asks, "Do you think I'm pretty?"
Yeah.
When Chaz meets her the second time, he just has to keep asking her questions for her not to kill him.
Yeah.
But that wasn't the case the first 2 times. So that was weird.
Wait. Why wasn't it the case that... I thought the idea was that he just didn't think of it the first 2 times.
Well, the first person she kills, she asks, "Do you think I'm pretty?" And she says no, and then she kills him. Then the second time, she asks, "Do you think I'm pretty?" He says yes, and then she just changes subjects and kills him. So why didn't she just change the subject and kill him again?
I think the idea was that if he didn't answer her question and then kept asking questions, that there was nothing, that she wasn't allowed for some kind of rule set to kill him. Honestly, I will say that I would have liked to have understood the psychology of that.
Yeah, because I was confused.
It seemed a little bit random.
What was her deal? Like, what was the rules for her?
Yeah, I mean, I understood why she was doing what she was doing. Like I thought they did a good job of giving us her background, and it was that kind of classic criticism of, you know, the way we look at beauty in our culture and that kind of thing. And I like how that played. I thought that she was sufficiently menacing and really kind of creepy, and also impressive. Let me throw this out there too. Impressive that she was as creepy beneath the mask as she was with the mask on, because I've seen a lot of things where you kind of just want to use your imagination. Once they show it to you, it's not anything as gripping and terrifying as your own imagination made it out to be. That worked for me in this. That was wonderful.
This show does a really good job of being genuinely terrifying times.
I think so too. For the most
I know
part.
A lot of people that can't watch it at night.
And I don't want to watch it without all the. I mean, I want to turn all the lights off, man. I mean, I just love that sensation. It's great. Some people don't like the mood stuff. Some people say, why is it that every episode we got to have flashing lights? And I completely understand that criticism. It doesn't bug me really. I don't know why. I just like it seems to work for the ambiance. And yet, maybe if it keeps doing it every single episode... Now, I will say, though, that if it's always with... I just thought of this. If it's always happening with something related to the Rising Darkness, then that could be a matter of consistency.
Yeah. I know, like, a lot of occult detective shows, like Grimm does this and Supernatural does this, so I wonder if it just might not be, like, a contrivance of the genre, of just, like... that technique's there all the time anyway, so maybe if you're not accustomed to that, then it can be distracting.
Perhaps so, I don't know. Or maybe they think it's too typical too.
Maybe. Like the Rising Darkness thing was a thing for Supernatural for about a season. They handled it about as well as this show's doing it, in the same style. So maybe that's just what it is. Not a criticism really. Maybe it's just a taste thing. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I don't know either. Like I said, I've been fine with it. I just thought I'd point it out because people have thought, oh, sorry, I'm jumping everywhere. But there's another thing that we wanted to talk about today because we have not mentioned this at all in 5 episodes. And that is, well, 4 episodes. 5 episodes for this show. And that is that there is a lot of fear that the show will get canceled. And I am afraid of it too. And Steve and I have been talking about it, and it's been getting better. Like they are more than $1 million up from where they were second week. Halloween week was abysmal. They did like 0.9 million. It was awful. Opening week they did well enough to survive. If it had stuck at the 4.5 they had that first week, they'd be okay. But it's hovering between 3 and 3.5 right now. And if that I don't know what it was last week, but the week before. So if it sustains at that by NBC numbers and where they usually cancel things, it looks like there's a really good chance we don't get past the 13 they ordered.
Yeah.
And that would be really sad. I'm gonna go as far as at this point after 5 episodes to say catastrophic, because TV needs shows this smart. This is great. And I mean, like, I keep complaining that, or I have complained in the past, that we need different things that aren't just dark and broody all the time, that we need the more kind of lighthearted stuff, and we need variety. But we're starting to build some variety. Not everything has to be horror-based, but this, for the horror-based stuff, it's quirky, it's fun, it's engaging, it makes you think. This is providing a lot of variety for that genre. I really don't want to lose it.
Yeah, agreed. From everything to like House of Cards, Sherlock, Doctor Who, to USA, Burn Notice, White Collar Suits, to just comic book TV shows, this is my favorite.
Wow.
I think this is like
high
this is
praise.
the best stuff I'm watching right now.
My goodness.
And I don't want it to get canceled, like you said, because it's so fresh. This is a show where every time an episode ends, I can't wait a week for another episode. And I haven't had that in a while. Especially considering what Arrow's been like lately. I like Flash well enough, but I don't have like the anticipation weekly I do with this.
Even Gotham, I'm not waiting with bated breath as much. I mean,
neither am I. I mean, if I miss it the night it premieres, I'm okay with it.
Depends
I'm
on.
not like that with this show.
It somewhat depends with that show on the cliffhangers, but
yeah.
No, I'm with you. It's just and people have said it is too smart for TV, and it might be.
Yeah, I mean, my hope at the moment is NBC doesn't have any comic book things lined up right now. Comic book TV shows are really big for all the major networks.
Who got Supergirl? Who got Supergirl?
Well, it's not out yet, though.
Oh no, I know, but they're gonna. But isn't that NBC? Like they're gonna have that in the.
I think so, yeah. But
near
I just
future.
feel like as far as like superhero TV shows on TV right now, I wonder if they'll renew it for season 2, just out of faith that comic book shows do generally well.
Oh, okay, that's possible. I mean, it might be that they might have enough faith in Supergirl to go, let's keep this on another season, and we might generate more buzz for it by having another DC-based comic book show.
Yeah, because it seems like everyone at NBC, as far as interviews are concerned and Twitter and stuff, everyone, when this show is on, is really excited.
Mm-hmm.
Like Twitter, there's lots of live tweets for this show. It's really popular, at least as internet stuff is concerned. So I don't know what's wrong with the ratings, because the ratings don't reflect the popularity it seems to have.
Well, and that's true. Part of the thing you have to keep in mind, of course, is that we just don't live in the watch when it's on era anymore. And I mean, like we are starting to look more at on-demand numbers, and there is a DVR section now to ratings that you and I aren't even seeing, but that they do keep up with now. And so it might be that other numbers can help to keep shows alive now when they haven't in the past. Who knows? On the other hand, we also live in a day and age where a show like this can get canceled and something on demand can pick it up and keep it going. So just because this gets canned, especially as popular as it is, regardless of those ratings, or at least as popular as it is, it's just that comic book fans much of the time just don't watch when it's on, right? So I'm just saying that Netflix or Hulu is going to pick the show up if NBC cancels it. I bet.
Yeah, I think that's true. And it seems like the show's writers have planned far enough ahead to where someone's going to want to keep it going somehow. Like they're already talking about Dangerous Habits and stuff, and we got to see John Smoke this time. So I think there's enough forward momentum as far as production's concerned that the chances of it coming back look pretty likely, even if it's not on NBC.
Also, we should talk about that. I was really surprised that already this early they have convinced NBC to let them do that. It was like a puff. It wasn't very long, but he had it. He smoked a second, and I was just surprised to see it this early, because I figured like 5 episodes in, you figure they probably had most of that in the can, if not all of that in the can, by the time they did the first episode.
Yeah.
I'm just really surprised that they've already convinced them. Because that would have had to have happened a while ago.
They didn't back down. Like, when it was announced he wasn't going to smoke on the show, it felt like they just weren't going to fight it anymore, but they did. They evidently tried pretty hard to convince NBC to do it. And I'm glad that they confirmed dangerous habits is a thing that's going to happen in the show.
Well, and once again, Eric suggested that might be the way that they could convince them that, like, that would be the deal. Okay, you guys can have him smoke as long as you do the storyline where it's where there are giant consequences to the smoking, so that we as a network don't look like we're glorifying that.
Yeah, agreed. And I'm gonna be curious to see how they handle that moving forward with the smoking. Like, I don't think they're gonna have a thing of like he's allowed to have a cigarette in every scene or anything like that.
Yeah, probably not. But maybe like one token
wonder,
moment.
Like, how much they're gonna like. They probably won't celebrate it too much. But I hope they still keep that well enough in the foreground to we get the idea that he's a chain smoker. Because I feel like just watching the show alone, you wouldn't get that sense.
So far, you still wouldn't, although they are trying to get a lighter in every place they can get one.
Yeah.
But just because...
He's constantly flipping open his lighter, and he even uses it to escape that car trunk, so...
But just because a person smokes doesn't mean a person chain smokes.
Yeah, exactly. And that's a pretty big distinction for John, so hopefully they're good about making sure that escalates.
On the other hand, it's important to note that a person who knows the character would care about that, and a person that doesn't, it wouldn't matter yet.
Yeah, that's fair.
And so, I mean, like, I don't think it's anything like a problem that the audience currently wouldn't put 2 and 2 together and know he's a chain smoker. And when they do, even when they get to the story arc where the fact that he's a chain smoker really matters and is like a huge deal, they can play it in such a way where an audience member isn't going to say, well, now wait a minute, how come I didn't know that before?
Yeah, exactly. And I think at this point I have enough faith to say that they're going to be able to handle all that really well. I know Eric said, I think in the pilot discussion, that if you just watch the show, then you could call yourself a Hellblazer fan, and I'm really starting to agree.
Yeah.
I feel like this, even if it's not like 100% faithful in adapting, it's so true to the spirit of that book, and it's so consistent with what that book sets out to do, that it's pretty much Hellblazer. It's everything Hellblazer except the title.
Yeah, and for me, it's exactly the sort of thing I want to see adapted on TV. Like, I think I prefer to watch, this is just me, and I'm not a big occult guy, but I think for this particular kind of genre, I prefer to watch this more than I like to read it.
Yeah, that's totally fair. It's going to be interesting to see if you do ever like go into the comics and read it and then talk about the show. Yes,
I'd be happy to read some. I'd love to do a vault or two. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, it's going to be great because it's not that different, but the atmosphere really changes when you get the written versus the show.
Oh yeah, it would have to, sure, and just seeing how you adapt that to a different medium, I'm sure is totally fascinating, especially going backwards. I'm sure that's fascinating. What else from the episode should we talk about real quick before we go to best moment, worst moment? There's definitely some stuff we've not talked about yet. Jim knows stuff about Zed already. That's left kind of cryptic. We don't really know what that's about yet.
He mentions that like Zed's a runaway and he found her file and he destroyed it for her.
Yeah.
So I don't know if they're going to do the comic book Zed thing, and I know you haven't read that yet, so I don't want to spoil it. But
yeah, thanks.
It looks pretty likely that they may not go all the way with it, but at this point, like, there's no holds barred. They might as well do the whole Zed origin thing.
Well, there's 2 things I'm pretty sure about, and I'm saying this having not read the comics, so I'm saying this with a certain degree of ignorance, which according to Birdman can be a virtue. The first is, I think that at the very end, the "someone who will betray you" line, and us clearly we're supposed to be thinking of Zed, is a total red herring.
Yeah, I agree.
I just don't think that's what it is. Now, what the heck is it? Because there's hardly any other supporting cast, and I don't think they do that to Chaz. I guess we'll see. I don't know yet.
That's my prediction. I think it is Chaz.
Okay, we'll talk about that in predictions then, because I don't have an idea yet. My wife and I argued about it, so I'll tell you about that in a little bit. But the other thing is, so Zed, probably a red herring. The other thing is, they're going to sleep together in the next 2 to 3 episodes. That's just coming, right? Like there's so much sexual tension built up between those two. And I mean, I know they're a thing in the comics, and I know they're a thing, according to Eric, from the very beginning, when she shows up in the comics. When he starts saying that, like, he likes to know something about everyone he sleeps with, and that kind of stuff, I think that at least, if I'm right about the red herring thing, once we get past that, and once he knows he can trust her at least more than whoever it is that's betraying him, I think at least at that point, so maybe not 2 or 3 episodes, but at least at that point, it's very likely they start getting together, because honestly, I really got the sense from this episode that if he wanted to be in the same hotel room with her and wanted to sleep with her that night, she would have been game.
Yeah, probably so. I'm glad that they're keeping that as tightly written and pushing it as far as possible, because
they are.
Their relationship, the fact that they sleep together is a pretty important plot point in the comic, and the way they're handling her backstory and the fact that it might actually turn out being faithful, that should be a payoff kind of thing.
Oh, cool. Do you think they're dragging us out on that? Because I don't. I mean, I'm not sitting here like, okay, fine, get together already. I don't have that. Like, I think it's pretty natural. Like, there's a natural build to it.
Yeah. She's got a very specific air of confidence to her, and Constantine's got the same thing. So I don't think it's dragging them along. I don't think it's, like, stressing the tension or, like, CW style, like, happing up drama. There's a legitimate progress that has to happen before they can sleep together.
Well, and there's a certain amount...
Like, even if they don't do the Zed origin, then them sleeping together will be a payoff to what their characters have been through at some way.
I feel like there's a certain amount of self-respect between the both of them, too. Especially the Constantine, where like, you know, I think he's not real sure that he wants to literally get in bed with her, with as unsure as he is about her, because he had that line a couple episodes ago where he mentioned, just like he did in the narration a couple episodes or like an episode before that you know, this is somebody that you know, he can't trust people, and that she is that he can't be sure what her motivations are exactly. And he, of course, is very distanced from people in general, and doesn't want them around because they just might get killed, because everybody who's around him gets killed. You gotta wonder what happens to. You gotta wonder if he doesn't have a complex about girls who sleep with him. You know, like. Yeah.
I mean, it's very possible that he does.
You'd think he'd have some kind of intimacy issues.
Yeah. What's gonna be interesting though is, I know you talk a lot about this because you do all these shows, and so, like, certain themes just permeate into they get old, like the secrets and lies.
Yeah.
This show does a really good job of making that fresh. I mean, we've seen, like, hundreds of sex scenes between, like, 2 characters that get together for cheap drama and such, to where it, like, loses weight. If these two do eventually end up sleeping together, it almost feels like that's going to be a weighty thing, just from the way they set up those 2 characters. It doesn't feel like a generic romance kind of thing that you can skim over. It feels like a scene that's going to have depth to it, regardless, because of the way it's been set up thus far.
Yeah, this show so far is a workshop about how not to be cheap on television. And I really wish that every other show I was watching would take notes.
Oh, yeah. Agreed.
I really do. When you're talking about the relationship stuff, Gotham needs to take notes on this show.
Oh, Barbara. Yeah.
Yeah. You know, and I mean, I don't mean to. I know that they're different things, and so it's maybe somewhat unfair to compare them too much. You know, I wouldn't want to spend too much time doing that, but you start to get a different sense of perspective when you throw this show in the mix of everything else we're watching. I think Gotham would feel like a much more elevated experience if I weren't watching the show.
Yeah.
And going on the other end, I think I would be enjoying Arrow more this season if I wasn't watching the show.
Yeah, agreed. it's not great to compare them all the time because I realize that these are different things, but it's really hard not to, because just as comic book fans, like, there's a tendency to watch everything. And so it's impossible to have some things not feed into others.
Well, and I just, compare and contrast can be a really interesting exercise. And also, you're not talking about apples and oranges completely, because as we both said, we were talking about a lot of the same themes. We were talking about, even though this isn't really a superhero show, you've got secret stuff. You have, to a degree, some identity stuff. There's the question of whether this person can be considered a hero, and if he's dabbling in you look at his magic like superpowers. Is he using his powers making things worse than actually making them better? Would the world be a better place without him? So yeah, there are too many things that are all way too connected to not look at these shows together. Anything else you wanted to talk about before we go on?
One last thing I wanted to mention is about the Voudou stuff.
Mm-hmm.
When Superhero Enthusiast and I reviewed the pilot for the show, he's read about more of this stuff than I have, so he mentioned that all of the exorcism stuff he did in that episode was extremely authentic. And so when I was watching this episode and watching the live tweets and such, there's actually Voodoo consultants that worked on the show to make sure all that looked real. And they posted a picture of the symbol of the seal that's on the skull of Midnight's sister, and all of that stuff's real. All of that stuff, you can look into books and such, and they've made it almost as accurate as possible for television.
That's amazing.
Yeah, like, they're really taking care of the occult stuff. It's not just gibberish.
Just the care they're taking on the production of this. It's just really surprising that for this property, you've got people that care that much to translate it right.
Yeah.
Kind of surprising.
I mean, look at another geeky thing, like Live and Let Die, the James Bond movie and the Fleming book. It gets some flack for being a bit racist and portraying voodoo in an inaccurate light. And then you just compare what you see there to here, and you can't make that criticism at all, and that there's totally different experience going on between those two mediums.
Oh, yeah, that's a really good point. Sure. No, you're looking at a totally different culture.
Yeah, exactly.
You can't, you look at it and you can't even process it.
Yeah, and not like a slight against Live and Let Die. Like, I love James Bond and such, but like that concept of voodoo versus the one they're portraying here, they're like night and day.
Yeah. No, I thought this was fascinating. And what's interesting is I felt like it wasn't quite like I'd seen it before, which means I haven't seen it done very authentically, if this did it authentically.
Yeah.
So that's really interesting. Well, let's go on to best moment, worst moment, or as we like to call on this show, at least so far, best moment. And Steve, what is your favorite moment for this episode?
My best moment is pretty easily the John and Midnight arguing after their spell fails.
Oh yeah,
I thought like every line out of their mouths were fantastic. The acting was great. The atmosphere was fantastic. Just it's pretty much near a perfect scene. I loved it.
My keyboard is on fire when I watch the show. I do nothing but write down quotes. It's ridiculous. There are other shows that I watch where I write down a couple quotes, and this show like I can't. I feel like I'm writing the script that I'm watching. There's so many good lines. It's great.
Yeah, like I've got 4 quotes this time, so like it's just such a good show.
Yeah, that was. It was kind of a tie between that and the flip. The flip of roles in the car.
Oh yeah.
I liked that a lot too. As I alluded to, I did not have a worst moment. I tend not to with the show so far. I mean, not that I'm being uncritical. If they have come up before, but I didn't have one this time. Did you have one? Anything come to you?
Just my nitpick of like what was going on with Chaz and confronting that spirit that last time before she fades away. Like, what are the rules for her? But that's I don't think that's really a bad moment. It's just a question mark.
Question mark. Yeah. Yeah. If I had to throw one in there, that would probably be it. That and like I said, I just don't think that music would be that muffled.
Yeah.
Let's go on to quotes. I had a million of them.
Yes.
When Constantine sees the picture of the woman from when she was alive and was a model and says, "I wouldn't kick her out of bed." That was pretty great. I lost it. This is so absurd. Chaz has got this giant gash all the way across his stomach, and a cop asks him if he's okay, and he says, "I think I just hit my head."
You have an extra shirt in that ambulance?
Do you have an extra shirt? Do you have one? I'm going to throw some more out, but I don't want to do all the talking.
Yeah, I've got, like I mentioned before, sounds like you're hell-bent on a path to redemption.
Yeah.
I really liked you're a magpie of magic, a thief of tradition.
I've got that. Yep.
And then I really loved a rich man's scotch always comes with an aftertaste.
Oh, I didn't notice that one. Yeah.
Yeah, it's at the very end when he says our truce ends at the bottom of that glass, and I wanted to write that one too because that's a good line.
The writing in this show, it's unbelievable. We have I mean this in the sense of good ones. We have novel level writing in the show. Like, this is not TV writing. This doesn't even feel like movie dialogue. This feels like people having to figure out and I mean, this guy playing Constantine, I can't believe they found a guy that can do this. I mean, it sounds like we've got people who have figured out how to deliver the kind of dialogue that you usually have to use your imagination to even make work.
Yeah, I mean, it's just heightened enough. It's just it perfectly encapsulates everything that the show is talking about, and it's not heavy-handed.
Yeah, and it's not that it's not like conversational. You know what I mean? Like it's entertaining. It's the kind of you can still watch it and not be like, oh God, this is all over my head. I don't know what people are saying. It's just he doesn't treat the audience like it's stupid. There is not a lot of exposition and dialogue in this show.
Yeah. And
I
just
love that.
like you talked about with the actors able to deliver it, like just the way they hang on certain words, like that argument between Midnight and Constantine. I rewinded that both times I watched it just because it's such a good exchange. The way he stresses you're a magpie of magic. Yep. It's just great.
Yep, I wrote that one down. It's hard to find a dessert that pairs with pig's blood.
That one's great.
Voodoo is nothing but a magical excuse for a party. And finally, when Chaz says, and I know you had issues with the rules of it, but when Chaz says, "Can you believe it's taken me this long to ask you questions?"
Oh yeah, that's great.
I had the same thought just before he said it. I kind of had the same thought.
Again, not a bad scene. It's a good scene. It's just a question mark.
Oh, I missed guest stars. Did you happen to write anybody down?
Only Jim Corrigan. And he's only had very minor roles. Like he was the head riot guard in Guardians of the Galaxy.
Oh, weird. Okay.
Yeah, his name is Emmett J. Scanlon.
We have not talked about the whole Spectre thing. I guess we can talk about this with predictions. Well, we're getting right into it. Let's go ahead and do that here in a second after comic references. I mean, I got the Spectre, obviously. Anything else that I didn't really... I guess I wasn't looking real hard for comic references because I don't know this material.
Well, yeah, obviously there's the Spectre thing. They talked about dangerous habits being adapted. Zed's backstory that was being hinted at, and everything with Papa Midnight's sister is all straight from the comics.
Okay, sweet. I'm sorry. Let's go ahead and go then straight to predictions. And my question to you is, what exactly is Zed seeing when she gets the psychic read on Jim, and you get the hint of the Spectre? Is she seeing his future, or is she seeing something that's there already?
I'm assuming she's seeing the future, because the way the Spectre works, at least in comics, is you die and he brings you back as his vessel, and so I guess that's why he's like all bloody and such. So I think what it is that she's seeing his future, that he's about to die pretty brutally, and then the Spectre's going to inhabit his body, and he'll live with that.
When do you think that happens? You think we're coming up on it?
I'm predicting this season. I think this season we're going to get Spectre stuff.
Yeah.
And it's great, because we've got Crispus Allen over at Gotham, who has no character, and he's a Spectre in the comics.
Yeah, interesting.
And this guy has one episode, maybe 15 minutes on screen. He's instantly better than 10 episodes of that guy.
Well, that helps, because Crispus Allen doesn't say things.
Exactly, he's got no dialogue.
No, he has the personality of a box of cereal. That's why I call him Crisp Bags, and I'm just waiting for... No, you're absolutely right. No, this guy was really interesting. He seemed really, really hardened and kind of sad, and...
Yeah.
I thought there was a nice degree of hubris there. I really, or not hubris. What am I talking about? It's like, what is it, 2 a.m. There was a nice degree of pathos there, I thought.
Yeah, the Spectre in the comics, at least Golden Age, Jim Corrigan is like more hard-boiled detective, and there's hints of that here. Like he's a little bit of like washed-up hard-boiled.
He's definitely played by an actor who I could really see, like he kind of has the visage of that. I could really see him playing that. So if with the Spectre stuff he kind of gets possessed with a slightly different personality or a combination of personalities, you could totally see them going that direction.
Yeah, agreed.
Other predictions, other things.
I think Chaz is the one that ends up betraying him.
Yeah, okay, alright. Just throwing it out there. Yeah, it's not Zed's too easy. The show's too good for that.
Yeah, agreed. I think it's Chaz mostly because there's that mystery built up around like how he's coming back, but they keep shifting the mystery to Zed.
Yeah.
And then there's going to be an entire episode about his backstory, and they mention the fact that it's going to be a little bit tragic. So, I mean, I really wonder if it's some kind of like deal with the devil thing that happens with Chaz.
And if it's like a betrayal, but a really sad, tragic thing where he's put himself in a position where there's nothing else he can do, and he feels like he has to do that. Is it you think one that he'll be able to come back from? Because he's kind of Constantine's sidekick. I can't really imagine the show writing him out.
I don't know. It's going to be interesting to see how he deals with it. I'm not really sure at this point because like this John's got the personality where like he could very easily say no, I don't trust you ever again because people don't change. To I need you because I'm really unstable or something like that. Like it could go either way.
Well, there's one thing we know he can't do to get himself out of that situation, which is manipulate Chaz into sacrificing himself because Chaz doesn't die for some reason. So we know that the scene in the theater doesn't happen with him. We know there's no sacrificial lamb thing because, well, and you know what? Maybe the idea is he made some kind of a deal with the devil to get the ability he has. But
yeah, it's possible. Maybe there's terms and conditions to that John just doesn't know about yet.
You'd think John would want to know as much as he could about it to even work with the guy.
Right.
Is the only thing I'm wondering, because like John's not surprised by it whenever it's happened. He knows about it. He just might. You're right. He might not know the complete extent. And I also wonder if the taxi has those powers, because I can't believe that they repaired it that quickly. Maybe they did it magically.
Yeah, maybe so.
It was out for a while. It was in repairs.
Lack of taxi in this episode.
We got one.
Yeah, just one. I was hoping for more taxi ride around.
We did get to see it. I've mentioned some things about Doctor Who because people keep talking about how this is connected to Doctor Who, and I had the same thing. First episode, I was like, oh man, I'm so cool for thinking of that, and then that's what everybody else has said. But I've said that the taxi reminds me a little bit of the call box because it's old fashioned and it's not a thing that you see all the time, and it's the trademark vehicle, and if you knew Constantine every time you saw it, you'd know that it's him, but he kind of tries to stay on the down low so nobody knows about it. But there is one thing that we have not mentioned that is very Doctor Who, and that is that he has a playing card that he can show people, and it's whatever he wants them to think that it is.
Like
and
psychic paper.
That's psychic paper. It's the exact same thing, yeah.
Oh yeah, I like that. I also really like that the Doctor is a character that's all about people constantly change and evolve, and John's the exact opposite.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's fun.
I agree. I had not spent any thought on that yet. And it's 2 in the morning. Anyway, okay, so time now for trivia questions. And Steve, what was your trivia question from last time? What is the answer, sir?
Last time we talked about Papa Midnight in the first 2 issues of Hellblazer.
Yes.
Where he has a group of servants that he uses because he says they're very easy and they're simple to manipulate. And what type of monster are these servants? The answer is zombies. He just has a group of zombies he uses as butlers.
Zombie butlers?
Yeah, it's great. It's hilarious.
I hope they do that.
There's a great exchange where he's like, do I have to teach you how to use a doorbell again?
You know what they should do? They should do that in this show, but they should make them look like the gentlemen.
Yes, that'd be terrifying.
Because the gentlemen are terrifying.
They are. I need to go back and watch Buffy again. I love that show.
Oh, God. I want to watch that. Anyway, my question from last time was, what is the name of the knife that Constantine has to go steal, or somebody steals, and that was it Zed?
His friend.
Oh yeah, the guy that he then sacrifices, that he couldn't do that with Chaz because Chaz, it's only a flesh wound. But anyway, the knife's name was Kusa, and the same person answered both of those correctly first. Can you guess who it was, Steve?
I am going to guess the guy from
it was
Discussions.
Zombie Thing MD, and Zombie Thing MD has been answering so many questions lately that it makes it look like we have one viewer, which is not true. If you look at the view count, I mean, you might be the first person watching, in which case, then that
maybe he just skips to the very end of the video every time.
Just ran really quick. That's a good strategy. That might be what he's doing. Anyway, so he keeps answering, and he's just amazing. He keeps answering the questions. I just want to mention that I do get a number of responses every week, And he's so quick on the button. So anyway, congratulations to you one more time, Zombie Thing MD, and that was very appropriate, because you, too, might be a zombie butler. Steve? He might be a zombie medical doctor butler. Steve, what is your question for today?
Oh, okay. My question for today... Oh, I do want to mention, though, really quickly, before we wrap up the show, there is actually Constantine news we should probably cover before this ends.
Oh, geez, really? Is this a thing?
Yes, I just got a message from Tamir Mugo about the production of the show.
Okay, alright, go ahead. Cool.
Okay.
This just in, breaking news!
Officially going to stop production after 13 episodes. Now, whether or not it's canceled, we don't know.
So just going to stop production?
Yeah, it's stopping production after episode 13. This has been confirmed at Yahoo.
I don't know what that means.
Neither do I. Production stops at 13 episodes. We don't know if it's getting renewed or not.
That's not good news.
No,
that's
not.
Oh, that's rough. Yeah, because that means that they haven't heard yet and they're nervous about it.
Yeah. There's no other information besides that, but I did want to mention it really quick.
That means they haven't renewed it yet. They haven't ordered any more episodes, which means that the likelihood of it getting either canceled or getting stalled out is really good right now. What I could see happening is they leave all the sets up and stuff, and maybe like they don't get renewed for the spring, but they either get renewed after that. Like maybe they want to see how well it does on Instant or whatever, or it gets canceled and then it takes a year or two and then somebody else picks it up.
Yeah, I mean, I hope that's not the case. Hopefully it does get to go like a straight solid run, but it doesn't look likely.
Man,
that's really disappointing.
Why you have to depress me right at the end with the trivia?
I mean, Tamir Mugo, he mentioned me, and he had to keep me well informed.
Okay, look, nobody performed Voudou on the Messenger. Anyway, Steve, what is your trivia question for this week?
Okay, my question for this week is targeted towards Jim Corrigan the Spectre. So in Gotham Central, both Jim Corrigan and Crispus Allen are main characters. And Corrigan actually kills Crispus Allen, that's how he becomes the Spectre. So in this series, who kills Jim Corrigan to avenge Detective Allen?
That's a great question.
I will mention that there's two reveals, and I'm talking very specifically, who do they reveal as the killer in Gotham Central?
Okay. Steve, that's a really good question, and you should keep trying to keep the quality of those up, because you may only get to ask 8 more.
I hope not. I want to ask.
Oh, okay, man, I hope not, too. Okay, my question for today, as always from the episode, is when Constantine and Zed are at the hotel, and Constantine is hoping for information about Zed while they're being kind of playful. What is the one thing John learns about her as she's being tight-lipped about where she comes from? He learns one really useless bit of information about her, and she's like, "That's all you get." What is that piece of information? If you think you know, as always, go to Geekvolution.com, click on the contact page, and fill out the form there, and make sure that you do it right away, right now. Go really fast, because chances are Zombie MD has already gotten there and beaten you. But just roll. Go, do it. If you know...
I mean, technically, I can go answer these questions right now, because you haven't posted them yet, and I'd definitely be first.
That's true, but you have to pretend like you're somebody else, because I'd be like, Steve, you're Steve. Like, I'm not gonna take that.
Eric.
That would be really funny. I would have no way to know, really. I'm like, you make up a fake email like eric@ericholden.com. Anyway, so if you think you know the answer to either of our trivia questions, go to geekvolution.com, go to the contact page, fill that out, and then we will give you credit for answering the questions first correctly if that happened. So, do that. And anyway, thanks as always for watching. We sure appreciate it. And boy, I'm loving this show. I am super sad to hear that it might not be sticking around, but I sure hope that is premature.
Yeah, I hope so too. This is easily the best thing I'm watching on television right now. It's fantastic.
Everybody, thanks again. I am Captain Logan.
And I'm Steve Maxey.
And we'll see you again next time.